The small house at the end of Maple Street looked different that morning. Sunlight peeked through the worn-out curtains, casting long shadows on the walls that seemed to hold more stories than anyone could imagine. 12-year-old Jake sat at the kitchen table, pushing around his breakfast cereal with a silver spoon. His eyes were tired, but his mind was anything but sleepy. Michael Rodriguez, Jake's father, moved around the kitchen with nervous energy. At 45, he was a successful businessman with salt and pepper hair and expensive suits that spoke of years of hard work. Today was different. His movements were more careful, his smile more practiced. Jake knew something big was happening, and he could feel it in the air. "Big day today, buddy," Michael said, adjusting his tie in the reflection of the microwave. His voice tried to sound casual, but Jake could hear the hidden excitement. Jake remained quiet. He had learned to be an observer, to watch and listen more than he spoke. Life had taught him that silence often revealed more than words. The divorce 5 years ago had changed everything. Jake remembered the day his mother left, the loud arguments, the sudden silence that followed. Since then, he had become closer to his father, not by choice, but by circumstance. They were more like roommates than a typical father and son, both trying to navigate their broken family's remains. Michael had dated several women over the years. Some stayed for a few weeks, others for a few months. But Alina was different. From the moment Jake first met her 6 months ago, something felt unusual. She was beautiful, no doubt about that. Tall, with perfectly styled dark hair and eyes that seemed to sparkle when she smiled. But Jake had always been good at reading people, and something about Alina didn't feel right. "Are you excited about the wedding?" Michael asked, breaking the morning silence. His hand reached out to ruffle Jake's hair, a gesture that used to happen more often when Jake was younger. Now it felt forced, almost like a script they both knew too well. Jake mumbled something that could have been a yes or a no. His mind was elsewhere. Recently, he had been helping his father with some computer work. Michael wasn't very good with technology, always asking Jake to help him with emails, setting up new devices, or solving internet problems. It was during one of these help sessions that Jake had accidentally discovered something that would change everything. The kitchen clock ticked loudly, 8:30 a.m. In just a few hours, his father would be getting married. The wedding was planned at the grand ballroom of the city's most expensive hotel. Hundreds of guests were expected. Flowers had been ordered. A white dress was waiting. Catering was confirmed. Everything was set. But Jake knew something no one else did. A secret that burned inside him like a hot coal. A truth that could destroy everything his father had planned. His fingers unconsciously traced the edge of his phone, the device that held the evidence he had discovered. Outside, the morning sun continued to rise, unaware of the storm brewing inside the small house on Maple Street. Jake looked out the window, his young face a mixture of worry, fear, and determination. Something was going to happen today. Something big. The wedding preparation room was a whirlwind of activity. Alina stood in front of a large mirror, her white wedding dress sparkling under the bright lights. She looked perfect, too perfect, some might say. Her makeup artist worked carefully, adding final touches to her flawless appearance. But perfection often hides secrets, and Alina had more secrets than most. Outside the room, Jake watched from a distance. He remembered the day he first discovered something strange about Alina. It happened a few months ago, when he was helping his father with some computer work. Michael wasn't good with technology, always asking Jake to help him with emails and setting up devices. That day changed everything. Jake had been sitting at his father's desk, trying to fix an email problem. The computer screen showed a jumble of old emails, and something caught his eye. At first, he thought it was nothing. But as he looked closer, a strange feeling grew in his stomach. The emails were not what they seemed. Alina's background was impressive on paper. She worked as a high-level marketing executive, traveled the world, and seemed to have a perfect life. Michael was head over heels in love. He talked about her constantly, her intelligence, her beauty, her success. To the world, They were the perfect couple. But the emails told a different story. Jake had discovered documents that showed Alina was not who she claimed to be. Her work history seemed fake. The company she mentioned didn't exist. Her past addresses were like ghosts, impossible to trace. One email showed a conversation about multiple identities, bank accounts in different names, and something that looked like a carefully planned scheme. The boy knew he had a choice. He could stay quiet and let the wedding happen, or he could speak up and risk destroying his father's happiness. The weight of this knowledge was heavy on his young shoulders. Michael walked into the preparation area, looking like the happiest man in the world. His suit was crisp, his smile bright. He didn't notice the tension in Jake's eyes, or the way the boy's hands were slightly shaking. Love, Jake realized, could make people blind to the truth. The wedding venue was stunning. White flowers lined the walkway. Gold decorations sparkled everywhere. Hundreds of guests were arriving, dressed in their best clothes. Cameras flashed. People laughed. Everyone seemed excited except Jake. His mother would be arriving soon. They had spoken on the phone earlier, and she seemed worried. "Be careful," she had told him. "Trust your feelings." Jake remembered those words now. His mother always said he had a special ability to see things others missed. As the wedding time drew closer, Jake's heart raced. He knew what he had discovered could destroy everything. Alina's perfect smile, his father's happiness, the entire wedding. All of it could come crashing down with just a few words. He looked at his phone again. The evidence was there, clear and undeniable. Screenshots, emails, strange documents that told a story of lies and deception. Jake was just 12 years old, but he understood more than most adults. Sometimes, the truth is more important than keeping everyone happy. The wedding music started to play. In the distance, guests began to take their seats. Everything was ready. But Jake knew something no one else did. A secret that could change everything in just a moment. The wedding hall was packed with people. Soft music played in the background, and everyone looked happy and excited. But Jake sat in the corner, his heart feeling heavy. He knew something that could destroy everything around him. The fancy decorations, the happy guests, his father's big smile. All of these could fall apart with just a few words. Alina looked beautiful. Her white wedding dress was perfect. She walked slowly, looking like a movie star. Her smile was bright. Her makeup was flawless. To everyone else, she seemed like the perfect bride. But Jake knew different. He had seen the emails. He had discovered the strange documents on his father's computer. Michael stood at the front of the hall, waiting for his bride. He looked proud and happy. His suit was expensive, and his smile was wide. Jake watched his father and felt a mix of emotions. He loved his dad, but he also knew the truth had to come out. The story began months ago. Jake had always been good with computers. His father wasn't. So Michael often asked Jake to help him with email problems and computer issues. That day, Jake was trying to fix an email account when he saw something strange. At first, he thought it was a mistake. But as he looked closer, he realized something big was wrong. The emails talked about fake identities. They showed bank accounts with different names. There were conversations about tricking people and making money in weird ways. Jake remembered the first time he met Alina. She seemed perfect. She was beautiful and smart. She told great stories about her work and her life. Michael was completely in love with her. He talked about her all the time, saying how lucky he was to find her. But the emails told a different story. They showed that Alina was not who she said she was. Her work history was fake. The companies she talked about didn't exist. Her past addresses were like ghosts, impossible to find. One email showed a plan to trick rich men out of their money. The boy knew he had a big choice to make. He could stay quiet and let the wedding happen, or he could speak up and stop his father from making a big mistake. It was not an easy decision for a 12-year-old. Jake looked around the wedding hall. Hundreds of people were there. His grandparents, his aunts and uncles, family friends, and work colleagues of his father. Everyone looked happy and excited. No one knew what Jake knew. His mother had warned him to be careful. Trust your feelings, she had told him on the phone earlier. Jake remembered her words. He had always been good at understanding people. Something about Elena never felt right to him. The wedding music changed. This was the moment when the bride would walk down the aisle. Elena started walking, looking like a princess. Her dress was white and beautiful. She smiled at everyone. To the world, she was perfect. But Jake knew the truth, and he knew he had to do something. His hands were shaking. His heart was beating fast. He looked at his phone, where he had saved all the evidence. Screenshots, emails, strange documents that showed Elena's real story. Jake was just a young boy, but he understood something important. Sometimes the truth is more important than keeping people happy. The moment was coming. The wedding was about to happen, and Jake knew he was the only one who could stop it. The wedding hall was quiet, filled with soft music and the sound of camera clicks. Elena was halfway down the aisle, her white dress flowing behind her like a beautiful cloud. She looked perfect, too perfect. Jake's eyes never left her. He knew something nobody else did. Just 2 months ago, Jake's life had been different. His father had introduced Elena as someone special. She's the one, Michael had said, his eyes bright with happiness. Jake remembered how Elena would visit their home, bringing expensive gifts, telling amazing stories about her work and travels. She seemed like a dream come true for his lonely father. But dreams can be dangerous, and some dreams are just carefully made-up stories. Jake thought back to the day he first discovered something strange. He was helping his father clean up some old computer files. Michael wasn't good with technology, always asking Jake to help him. That day, while searching through old emails, Jake found something that made his stomach feel weird. The first email was simple. It looked like a normal business message. But as Jake read more, he realized something was wrong. The email talked about fake names. It mentioned bank accounts in different countries. There were strange conversations about tricking rich people out of their money. At first, Jake thought he was imagining things. He was just a 12-year-old boy. Who would believe him? But the more he looked, the more he found. Elena's work history was like a puzzle with missing pieces. The company she talked about didn't exist. Her past addresses were impossible to find. Jake remembered how Elena would tell stories about her marketing job. She talked about big meetings, important clients, and world travel. Michael would listen with pride, believing every single word. But the emails showed something different. They showed a person who was good at making up stories. One email was especially strange. It showed a plan to meet a rich businessman. The language was careful, like someone writing a script. Jake didn't understand everything, but he knew something was not right. Elena was not who she said she was. The boy had tried talking to his father before, but Michael was in love. He didn't want to hear anything bad about Elena. "She makes me happy," he would say. "You don't understand grown-up love." But Jake understood more than his father knew. His mother had been worried too. When Jake told her about the emails, she became very serious. "Be careful," she had said. "Sometimes people are not who they seem to be." Jake knew his mother was smart. She had left Michael years ago, and now he understood why. The wedding hall was full of people. Hundreds of guests sat quietly, watching Elena walk down the aisle. They saw a beautiful bride. They saw a perfect moment. Nobody knew what Jake knew. Jake's hands were shaking. His phone was in his pocket, filled with screenshots and emails. He had saved everything carefully. The evidence was clear. Elena was not a successful marketing executive. She was something else entirely. He looked at his father. Michael stood at the front of the hall, waiting for Elena. He looked so happy. His smile was big. His eyes were full of love. He had no idea what was about to happen. Elena was getting closer to the front now. Just a few more steps, and she would reach Michael. The wedding would be official. Everything would change forever. Jake knew he had a choice. He could stay quiet and let the wedding happen, or he could speak up and stop a big mistake. The moment was coming, and Jake knew he was the only one who could save his father. The moment felt like it was moving in slow motion. Helena continued walking down the aisle, her white wedding dress floating around her like a cloud. Jake's heart was beating so fast, he thought it might jump out of his chest. He knew the truth, and he knew he had to do something. Suddenly, Jake stood up. The sound of his chair moving caught everyone's attention. People turned to look at the young boy. Some smiled, thinking he was just excited. Others looked confused. But Jake's face was serious. He was not smiling. He was not excited. He was scared but determined. His father, Michael, saw him first. Their eyes met across the crowded wedding hall. Michael's smile started to fade. Something in Jake's eyes was different. Something was wrong. "Stop." Jake's voice was small but clear. It cut through the soft wedding music like a knife. The entire hall went silent. Hundreds of eyes turned to look at the 12-year-old boy who had just interrupted the most important moment of his father's life. Helena stopped walking. Her perfect smile froze on her face. Michael took a step forward. "Jake," he said in a warning voice. "Not now." But Jake was beyond being stopped. He pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "Dad," he said, "she's not who you think she is." Whispers started to spread through the hall. Guests looked at each other, confused. Some people giggled, thinking it was a child's joke. But Jake knew this was no joke. He began to tell the story. The emails he had found, the fake work history, the strange bank accounts, the conversations about tricking rich men. Everything he had discovered on his father's computer came pouring out. Michael's face turned white. Elena's perfect makeup seemed to crack. She tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. The wedding photographer stopped taking pictures. The music died. Jake remembered how this all started. Months ago, when he was helping his father with computer problems. He had always been good with technology. His father was not. So Michael often asked Jake to help him with emails and computer issues. That day, Jake found something strange. At first, he thought it was a mistake, but as he looked closer, he realized something big was wrong. The emails talked about fake identities. They showed bank accounts with different names. There were conversations about tricking people and making money in weird ways. Now, in front of everyone, Jake was telling the truth. He showed the screenshots. He read parts of the emails. He explained how Elena was not a marketing executive. She was someone else entirely. Someone who had a history of tricking wealthy men. The hall was completely silent now. You could hear a pin drop. Hundreds of people listened to a 12-year-old boy reveal a shocking truth. Michael looked destroyed. Elena looked scared. She tried to say something, but no words came out. Jake knew he had just changed everything. His father's wedding, his father's life. Everything would be different now. But he also knew he had done the right thing. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's always better than a lie. The wedding hall became a storm of confusion. People started talking all at once. Some guests stood up. Others remained seated, shocked by what they had just heard. Jake stood in the middle of it all, his small body shaking, but his eyes brave and clear. Elena was the first to move. She tried to speak, but her words came out as a mumble. Her perfect makeup was now streaked with tears. Her white wedding dress, which had looked so beautiful moments ago, now seemed like a costume. Michael looked like he had been hit by a truck. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. He stared at Elena, then at Jake, then back at Elena. It was like he was seeing her for the first time. "Is it true?" Michael's voice was quiet but strong. Elena didn't answer right away. That silence was more powerful than any words. In that moment, everyone knew the truth. Jake had brought his phone forward. On the screen were screenshots of emails and documents. They showed a complicated story. Elena had a history of tricking rich men. She had used different names in different cities. Her work history was fake. The company she talked about didn't exist. Some of the emails showed bank transfers. Others showed conversations about planning new tricks. Jake had found everything while helping his father with computer work months ago. He had saved everything carefully, knowing something was wrong. The wedding photographer stood frozen. The music had stopped. The fancy decorations suddenly looked silly. A wedding that was supposed to be a happy moment had turned into something else entirely. Jake's mother arrived at that moment. She had been running late, and now she stood at the back of the hall. Her eyes found Jake. She looked proud of her son. She knew he had done something brave. Belinda tried to explain. She started talking about misunderstandings. She said the emails were not what they seemed. But her words sounded weak. Nobody was listening to her anymore. Michael walked closer to Jake. For a moment, everyone thought he might be angry. But then he did something unexpected. He hugged his son. "Thank you," Michael whispered. "You saved me." Guests started pulling out their phones. Some were calling the police. Others were taking pictures. The wedding hall was no longer a place of celebration. It had become a crime scene. Jake felt strange. He was just a 12-year-old boy, but he had just stopped a big mistake from happening. He had protected his father from someone who wanted to trick him. Belinda tried to run, but two of Michael's friends blocked the door. She looked trapped. Her perfect image was gone. The beautiful bride was now just a woman with a lot of secrets. The wedding cake stood untouched. The flowers were still beautiful, but everything had changed in just a few minutes. Jake looked around the hall. His father was talking to the police now. Alina was being questioned. People were still whispering and looking shocked. He thought about the emails he had found, the careful way he had saved the evidence, the moment he decided to speak up. A 12-year-old boy had just changed everything. Sometimes the truth is more powerful than any lie. And sometimes the most unexpected hero can be the smallest person in the room. The days after the wedding disaster were like a bad dream. Michael sat in his living room, surrounded by papers and police reports. Jake watched his father from the corner of the room, feeling both worried and confused. Investigators came to their house multiple times. They brought thick folders and asked many questions. Alina's true story was worse than anyone had imagined. She had a long history of tricking rich men in different cities. Each time, she would create a new identity, make friends, and then try to take their money. Jake learned more about what he had discovered. The email showed a complicated plan. Alina had been moving from city to city for years. She would find a successful businessman, make him fall in love, and then try to get his money. Michael was just her latest target. His father looked different now. The happy, confident man from before was gone. Now he looked tired and sad. But he kept telling Jake one thing. "You saved me, son." The police explained everything to Michael. Alina had fake documents. She had created stories about her work and her past. None of the companies she talked about were real. Her entire life was like a carefully made-up story. Jake's mother visited more often now. She would sit with Michael, helping him understand what had happened. She was kind, even though they had been divorced for years. Jake watched how adults could be friends even after a difficult time. At school, Jake became a hero. Kids talked about how he had stopped a fake bride. Teachers looked at him differently. Some called him brave. Others said he was smart. Jake felt strange about all the attention. Michael started talking to a lawyer. They wanted to make sure Alina could not trick anyone else. The investigation grew bigger. More people came forward with similar stories about Alina. She had done this many times before. Jake kept thinking about that day in the wedding hall. He remembered how scared he was, how his hands were shaking. But he also remembered how important it was to tell the truth. His father started to heal slowly. He began to smile again. He talked more with Jake. They spent more time together. The wedding disaster had brought them closer. Alina was arrested. The police found evidence of her tricks in many cities. She had been doing this for years, moving from place to place, creating new stories. tricking rich men out of their money. Jake's computer skills had saved his father. The same skills that Michael had always asked for help with had become their biggest protection. Sometimes, the things we think are small can become very important. The wedding decorations were packed away. The fancy cake was thrown out. The white dress was gone. Everything that was supposed to be a happy moment had turned into a life-changing story. Michael started to rebuild his life. He joined a support group for people who had been tricked. He wanted to help others understand how some people can create fake stories. Jake watched all of this happening. He was just 12 years old, but he had done something most adults would be afraid to do. He had told the truth when it was hard. He had protected his father when nobody else could. Sometimes, the smallest person can be the biggest hero. Jake had learned this lesson in the most unexpected way. One email, one moment of courage. That was all it took to change everything. Months passed. The world around Jake and Michael slowly returned to normal. But nothing would ever be the same as before. The wedding day had changed everything, and they both knew it. Michael started going to a special group for people who had been tricked. He would sometimes bring Jake along. These meetings were filled with people who had similar stories. People who had trusted the wrong person. People who had lost money. People who had lost hope. Jake became more than just a son to Michael. He became a friend, a partner, the person who had saved him from a big mistake. They started spending more time together. Michael learned to listen to his son, really listen. At school, Jake was different now. The other kids looked at him differently. Some called him a hero. Some were just curious about his story. Teachers treated him with more respect. They saw something special in him. The police continued their investigation into Elena. More and more stories came out. She had tricked people in 5 different cities. Each time, she would create a new story, a new identity. She was good at making people believe her. Jake's computer skills became something special. Michael started to appreciate technology more. He asked Jake to teach him about computers, about staying safe online, about checking information before believing it. Their home felt different, lighter, happier. The fear that Elena had brought was gone. Michael started smiling more. Jake felt more comfortable talking to his father about everything. Jake's mother was proud of him. She would visit more often. She and Michael became friends in a way they never were before. The divorce had separated them, but Jake's brave act had brought them closer. The court case against Elena was big news. Jake had to give evidence. He was scared but brave. He told everything he knew. How he found the emails. How he saved the information. How he stopped the wedding. Michael started a small group to help other people protect themselves from tricks. He would tell their story. How a 12-year-old boy saved his father from a big mistake. People would listen and learn. Jake learned important lessons. He learned that the truth is always better than a lie. He learned that being brave means speaking up, even when it's difficult. He learned that family is more important than anything else. The computer that had first shown the emails became a symbol of their new life. Michael kept it as a reminder of how close he had come to making a terrible mistake, a reminder of his son's bravery. Jake's school talked about his story. Some kids made fun of him. Some thought he was amazing. But Jake didn't care about what others thought. He knew he had done the right thing. Every weekend, Michael and Jake would have a special time together. They would talk. They would share stories. They would laugh about how life can change in just one moment. The wedding dress that was never worn became a memory. The decorations that were packed away told a story of a boy who was brave enough to tell the truth. Michael would look at Jake and see a hero, not just his son, but a person who had saved him from a big mistake, a person who had shown more courage than most adults would ever have. Jake was just 12 years old, but he had done something most people would be afraid to do. He had protected his family. He had told the truth when it was hard. He had shown that age doesn't matter when it comes to being brave. Years passed. Jake grew older. The wedding day that changed everything became a distant memory, but its lessons remained strong. Now a college student, Jake looked back on that day with a different understanding. What seemed like a simple moment of courage had become something much bigger. His life had changed completely because of one brave decision. Michael had become a different person too. He started a small organization that helped people protect themselves from financial tricks. He would travel and tell their story. The story of a father saved by his 12-year-old son. People would listen, learn, and become more careful. Jake studied computer science. His early skills that had uncovered Alina's trick had grown into a passion. He wanted to help people stay safe online. He wanted to create technology that could protect people from those who wanted to trick them. Every year, on the anniversary of the wedding day, Michael and Jake would have a special dinner. They would talk about life, about truth, about courage. Their relationship was stronger than most father-son relationships. They had been through something special together. Jake's mother was proud of both of them. She had watched her son grow into a brave young man. She had seen how one moment of truth had changed everything for their family. Sometimes she would join their special dinner, and they would laugh about that crazy wedding day. The story became famous in their community. People would recognize Jake. Some would ask to take pictures with him. Others would share how his story had inspired them to be brave. Jake always felt strange about the attention, but he understood its importance. Alina was still in prison. Her long list of tricks had finally caught up with her. The investigation Jake started had helped catch many other people like her. His small act of courage had become something much bigger than he could have imagined. Michael never tried to get married again. He had learned to be happy with himself, to trust himself. Jake had taught him the most important lesson. That family is about trust, love, and truth. Their home was different now, filled with love, filled with understanding. The fear that Alina had brought was completely gone. They had turned a moment of potential disaster into a story of hope. Jake remembered the day he stood up in the wedding hall, his hands shaking, his heart racing. He was just a 12-year-old boy then. Now he understood how important that moment was, how one person can make a big difference. The computer that first showed the emails was kept as a special memory. Michael had it framed, a reminder of how technology can reveal truth, a symbol of their journey together. As Jake prepared to graduate from college, he thought about his future. He wanted to create technology that could help people, technology that could protect families, technology that could reveal the truth. Michael watched his son with pride. The boy who had saved him had become a man who wanted to save others. Their story was more than just a family story. It was a story of courage, of truth, of love. Sometimes the biggest heroes are the smallest people. Sometimes the truth comes from the most unexpected places. Jake had learned this lesson early, and he would spend his life making sure others could learn it too. The wedding day that never happened had become the most important day of their lives. A day that showed how one moment of courage can change everything.